The Allen Lund Company is celebrating 48 years in transportation. Stop by and see us at Matt's, booth 18193.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Truck parking, driverless trucks, and broker fraud are a few of the trucking issues that are being talked about in the mainstream media. We speak with OOIDA's communications team about the association's take on the issues and the importance of having our voice heard. Load boards are a vital resource for truckers who work the spot market. However, in recent times, fraud and scam artists have started to work the load boards, and truckers end up being the victims. I'll get some advice on how to avoid the problems from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Business Services Department. And finally, recently there's been a lot of controversy regarding the new independent contractor rule from the Department of Labor, including concerns that it could upset the owner-operator model in trucking. However, the rule in place before, passed during the previous administration, contained a problem that the new rule would solve. I'll discuss that and more with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The U.S. Department of Labor's new worker classification final rule is now in effect. The 339-page final rule's stated purpose is preventing companies from misclassifying workers as independent contractors. It rescinds a Trump administration rule that focused on control and profit and replaces it with a totality of circumstances test. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association last week sent an update to its members as a way to help explain what the new rule does and doesn't do. What it doesn't do is maybe worth emphasizing the most. The Labor Department's final rule does not use the controversial ABC test or establish California's Assembly Bill 5 on the federal level. OOIDA wrote that unlike AB 5's forced use of the ABC test, the rule emphasizes that no one factor is determinative, and classification determinations are made on a case-by-case basis after all facts of each situation are considered. Efforts to overturn the rule are underway, though. Last week, lawmakers in the House and Senate introduced resolutions aimed at stopping the rule and returning to the regulations that were established under the Trump administration. The resolutions already have 54 co-sponsors in the House and 32 co-sponsors in the Senate, but until those resolutions are passed, the DOL's new rule is in effect. In the latest indicator that the trucking industry may be stabilizing, the number of people employed in the industry remained virtually unchanged last month. According to the latest numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, just 300 trucking jobs were lost in February. So far this year, trucking jobs are slightly down by 600. Last year, the trucking sector lost more than 35,000 jobs, though. The lack of movement in employment this year is in line with other indicators, suggesting the down cycle may soon be over. In its January market update, the OOIDA Foundation referenced the Cass Shipment Index, which believes the current down cycle is nearing an end due to rising import and intermodal trends, as well as a change in the truckload and less than truckload modal mix. Across all industries, 275,000 jobs were added to the economy in February. The unemployment rate rose by 0.2 percentage points to 3.9%. A recall has been issued for several hundred trucks manufactured by Navistar. It's over a problem with the steering gear shaft. Close to 300 international HV, HX, LT, and MV vehicles, model year 2025, are affected. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says the steering gear sector shaft may have been improperly heat-treated in the trucks, which can cause the gear teeth to crack or fracture. Dealers will replace the steering gears on affected trucks free of charge. Owner notification letters are set to go out at the end of April. An investigation is underway in Wisconsin after a deadly crash involving a semi and van over the weekend. It happened Friday morning on Highway 95 outside of Eau Claire. The Clark County Sheriff's Office says 9 people were killed, including the truck driver. The only survivor from the van is a 2-year-old boy. The stretch of Highway 95 was closed for hours on Friday but has since reopened. The Wisconsin State Patrol and Clark County Sheriff's Office are investigating. Pennsylvania is cracking down on work zone speeders, and they're using technology to do it. Speed cameras, more specifically. They're mounted on vehicles to detect and record drivers who are exceeding posted work zone speed limits by 11 miles an hour or more. PennDOT says the systems will only be in use when workers are physically present. First violations come with a warning. Then it's $75 for a second offense and $150 for any others. The Work Zone Speed Safety Camera Program, as it's called, started out as a pilot program. It has since been made permanent. Pennsylvania officials say it's been successful in changing dangerous driving behaviors for the better. The path through Memphis will look a bit different for the next couple weeks. The Tennessee DOT has shut down the I-55 Mississippi River Bridge connecting Memphis and Arkansas for a construction project. Crews are out working on the road deck. The bridge was shut down on Sunday evening. It's set to reopen on Sunday, March 24th. In the meantime, detours are posted. For up-to-the-minute updates on this closure or any other throughout the United States, head to landline.media and look under the Resources tab for our Road Conditions for Truckers tab. That's where you'll find links to conditions in all 50 states. Meanwhile, another closure you can find on that page, it's in Indiana, where the state DOT has shut down the Sherman-Minton Bridge in Louisville. The move was made after crews were conducting scheduled maintenance and found some issues that require immediate inspections and possibly repairs. The I-64 bridge between Indiana and Kentucky is completely closed. The Indiana DOT has not announced a possible timeline for reopening the 61-year-old bridge, which is in the midst of a renewal project. The Tennessee Department of Transportation has announced the installation of weigh-in motion systems at 28 sites across the state. A news release says the system will capture and record axle and gross vehicle weights. Some of the weigh-in motion systems will be located at enforcement sites operated by the Tennessee Highway Patrol. And finally, an alert for New York City truck drivers. The city has put an empty trailer ban into effect for city bridges on Monday. It's due to a high wind advisory. Gusts of up to 60 miles an hour were in the forecast. The ban of empty trailers and double trailers will stay in effect until 10 p.m. on Monday. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Steen Gronlund of Longmont, Colorado. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 54 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 405 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rutella. And if you're interested in receiving the Safe Driving Award, you can find a link to more information on our website, landlinenow.com. Again, that website, landlinenow.com. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the TA Truck Stop in Cartersville, Georgia. That's located at exit 296 on Interstate 75. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Registration is now open for OOIDA's Truck to Success seminar, which runs for 3 days starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri. Truck to Success features trainers both from OOIDA and elsewhere who provide a comprehensive course in what it takes to become and succeed as an owner-operator. The deadline to register to attend in person is October 1st. The deadline to register to attend by Zoom is October 21st. Participants who register before September 1st will receive $50 off, plus a 1-year membership to OOIDA for free. We'll have a link to more information at our website, landlinenow.com. Next, Ashley Blackford speaks with Narita Taylor and George O'Connor of OOIDA about the association's take on the issues. And I'll get some advice about how to avoid some recent scams from Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Business Services Department. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Loadboard Pro.
Buckling up keeps everyone safe on the roads. Learn more at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov. Paid for by FMCSA.
Landline Now, welcome back. OOIDA's Director of Public Relations, Narita Taylor, and Director of Communications, George O'Connor, join me now from D.C. How are you both doing?
Hey, we're doing great. Glad to be here and be on the show.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Today, we are talking about OOIDA in the news, and there is much to cover. I'll start with a topic that seems to have gotten a lot of attention in recent years, and that is, of course, truck parking. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette just did an article and spoke with OOIDA's Executive Vice President, Louis Pugh. Tell me more about that and what was covered.
Sure. So Jonathan Salant, who is the politics editor at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, he's based in Washington, D.C. He's been actually covering truck parking and trucking issues for a number of years. We've worked with him on a variety of road safety issues, but he has taken a keen interest in truck parking as it relates to roadway safety, and that's mainly because the Pennsylvania Turnpike is notorious for having trucks parked on the side of the road, and naturally, Pennsylvanians who might not be in the transportation sector are using these roadways. Pennsylvania Turnpike's a big one, and they're wondering why the heck are there trucks parked on the side of the road? And because it's not safe for them, it's not safe for the trucker. And Jonathan Salant's been doing a great job of telling that whole story of why they're there. They don't want to be there. There's just not enough truck parking. So, if you're a trucker and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place between your hours of service and safe parking, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And that's what we're trying to fix with our allies in Congress. And this particular Department of Transportation has been helpful to an extent on fixing the truck parking problem. Now, with this most recent article that Mr. Salant wrote, it had to do with new momentum behind the truck parking bill that's in Congress. And for Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey just added his name as a co-sponsor a couple of weeks ago. So with new momentum, with new support in Congress, it bodes well for ultimately getting this important piece of legislation signed into law.
Louis has been busy doing other interviews as well on this topic. I believe he did one with KDKA out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Tell me about that. That was on the bill, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And, sometimes that happens, for those in the media world, print comes first sometimes, followed by radio and TV. So, what'll happen is you get a print story, and then other reporters, other journalists in the region that might not be direct competitors because of the medium, they'll see that and say, okay, well, there's interest, and there's already going to be familiarity among a crossover audience. So they'll say, well, I'll just take that same topic if there's interest in it and use it in my medium, which in this case was radio. So Louis was able to go on KDKA out of Pittsburgh. I believe it's the biggest radio station in Pittsburgh, and just tell the same story. Tell the same story that truckers are parked on the side of the roads, on off ramps and on ramps, and they don't want to be there. And here's why. And not only that backstory, and here's a solution. And your senator from Pennsylvania is doing his part to fix this problem.
Now, another topic I wanted to touch on is driverless trucks. KXAN out of Texas recently did an investigative piece about a Central Texas highway that's a test site for these trucks. What was that all about, and how did OOIDA contribute to that piece?
Sure. So it's funny you say test site, because it's actually a public road that these companies are using as a test road. And there are a couple of companies down there currently operating a stretch of highway between Dallas and Houston. It's about 100 miles or so of highway. Now, they've been operating their autonomous trucks on this highway for a little bit of time, but they've had backup drivers in these trucks. So, and that's what we've always been in favor of, if you're going to have this autonomous technology, at least have a backup driver before the technology is mature enough. And from our estimation and what's publicly available, it's not nearly mature enough to be taking the driver out, which is concerning to us because CEOs of these tech companies are calling their shot, and they're saying by the end of the calendar year, 2024, by the end of this year, they're going to be taking these safety backup drivers out of the trucks. They're calling their shot. They're going to say they're taking them out, and that's confusing to us because in some of this financial reporting that is required from these companies, they're telling investors that they're only 93% of the way there in terms of safety and safety testing. So this seems to be at odds with roadway safety that these folks say that they're trying to fix with this autonomous technology. But from our estimation and from the available data that's out there, they really just seem to be pushing this immature technology to market before it's ready and before it's ready for to be safe on the road with passenger drivers driving all around them. And I mean, I think we've seen a lot of headlines over the last few months, whether it's in San Francisco or Phoenix, where these robo-taxis are being tested out, and they're running into everything. They're having problems all over the place. And if it's not safe on a four-wheeler, why the heck would you put this stuff on an 80,000-pound truck and unleash it on the highway? I mean, the folks in Texas didn't sign up to be guinea pigs.
Now, this story was one of those ones that it didn't just air on one station. That's right? That's
right. So KXAN is part of Nexstar, which is a larger media group. And in Texas alone, this ran. So KXAN is based in Austin, but this also ran across Texas and Houston, Dallas, and a number of other large media markets. So it's not. So this. If you're in Texas and you have a local television station that you tune into, you probably saw this story. So we were able to get the word out with our concerns of road safety in Texas, and that this technology is not ready for prime time. And people that are using this roadway might want to keep their heads on a swivel.
Do you find that happens a lot when we have, Louis or whomever from OOIDA do interviews? Because trucking issues, these are across the board. Do you find it's not just one station picking it up, but multiple stations?
Well, it depends. So sometimes it's a hyper-local issue where, they might take it and keep it local. Let's say they have, someone, from OOIDA, whether it's Louis or Todd, speak on sort of on the national level, and they might find a local trucker from a very particular media market who brings it right next door, if you will, and then it kind of stays local. But on a story like this, where it is it's not just the Austin media market, right? It's Houston, it's Dallas, it's Austin, and it's really the entire state, because they're looking to expand this program down the line. So it's of relevance to all Texans, really. And to bring it back to that Pennsylvania story in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, I mean, that's another one that it's a Pennsylvania-wide story. So it got picked up by the Patriot News, which is central Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh being western Pennsylvania and Patriot News being central Pennsylvania, because, Senator Casey, he represents the whole state, not just Pittsburgh. So sometimes it is within state boundaries. Other times, it might be a Nexstar that owns well over, I think, 80 stations across the country. So if it's of national prominence, then you might get a Texas station, then randomly a Wisconsin station, a California station, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Narita, I wanted to ask you about other podcasts and radio shows OOIDA has been on, talking about other issues like broker fraud and lease purchases.
Sure. So, there's a lot of podcasts out there, and we always are open to talking to just about anybody on the trucking side of those podcasts. But the one in particular recently that we have participated in is a show called Stay in Your Lane, which is hosted by John Maley of Triple T Transport, a third-party logistics company that hosts this podcast that can be found on various apps, including YouTube and other apps. And we are on there every once in a while. And most recently, Louis Pugh, Executive Vice President, was on there a few weeks ago talking about the broker issues that concern our members. You know, I don't think it's new to listeners that there's been concerns about broker fraud and broker transparency. Basically, you know, sharing the latest and the concerns that we hear from members on that segment, which can be found out there right now. Now, there is another segment that as of right this very second, I was literally just double checking. You can ask George here. He caught me looking at my phone. I don't think it's been posted yet, but it will be. And that is another segment that we were on recently with Jim Jefferson from our Compliance Business Services Department. He was on there as a guest talking about lease purchase agreements. Now, the reason that was the topic is a couple of reasons. First of all, lease purchase agreements is something that we as an association have talked about over a number of years, and the concerns that we have, the concerns that we hear from members on those types of contracts, but also because Jim sits as a committee member on a committee that was formed by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, a task force about lease purchase agreements. And while we do have a lot of concerns about those types of contracts, the good news is that it is getting a lot of attention from the Department of Transportation as well as a lot of other people. There's a lot of great people on that committee talking about those issues, and Jim was able to kind of give a couple of updates on the meetings that they have. There's going to be a meeting at MAT, and so maybe I don't want to give all the information. Maybe that's another segment to do about that topic by itself.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, you had mentioned the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reporter has done a lot of stuff on truck parking and the concerns with that. I'm curious, when reporters reach out to either of you, I would say, safe to say, I assume that most of them aren't on a trucking beat. Some I know are, but a lot of the kind of just television reporters, they cover everything. How do you gauge how much information they need and kind of ensure that they have a basic understanding of these issues, whether it be truck parking concerns or driverless trucks? What is your kind of process in that?
Well, for a lot of these news hits, we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're bringing it to them. And particularly with this, for example, this co-sponsorship from Bob Casey on the parking bill, Bob Casey, maybe thought it was a big deal, but I don't know if he put out a press release or not. So we coordinated with his office and said, hey, we think this is a big deal, and we're really happy to have you supporting this bill. And, we're going to augment your press office here, and we're going to do some press for you. And they said, that is amazing. Good for you. That's great. So we're the one pushing the press for them. And if a reporter does not have the background in whether it's transportation in general or trucking in particular, it's incumbent on us to ensure that every question, every knowledge gap is filled, every question is answered, and that they come away knowing more about trucking and knowing more about transportation than when they started.
All right. George, Norita, thank you so much.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
Hey, anytime. You bet.
That was George O'Connor, OOIDA's Director of Communications, and Norita Taylor, the Director of Public Relations, talking about recent news stories that OOIDA has been a part of. For more news and information from OOIDA, you can check out landline.media. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Every day, truckers call OOIDA for help with problems they encounter out on the road. And a lot of those calls go to the association's Business Services Department. Here to provide answers to some recent questions are Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of Business Services. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Mark, as always.
Good to be here.
Well, glad to have you with me. And this is a topic that I know you guys are unfortunately very familiar with, which is load boards. And people wanting to know what to look out for on these load boards. And there is a lot there. Where do we begin? Tom, what is the number one thing people need to be watching out for on these load boards?
Well, I mean, load boards are basically a place for brokers to post their freight and carriers to come and look at digital freight listed there as to, pick up, deliver, and, the information that they'll need. The problem is with these load boards is their vetting of the broker side of it. They don't do a lot of vetting or some thorough vetting. So we have carriers that pull loads off of these load boards thinking they're pulling for a legitimate broker, and it's not. It's a fraud. It's a ghost load or a reposted load or a double brokered load, however you want to go about it. They haul these loads. They have no clue that this is not the actual broker, that this stuff is double or triple brokered, that they're not hauling for who originally had the load. They get this stuff delivered, they turn in their bills, and all of a sudden the broker no longer answers their phone. Doesn't pay him, doesn't answer the phone. They don't know what do I do, you haul a $6,000 load, you put $2,000 worth of fuel in your truck, the wear and tear on your truck, you run across country, tolls and everything else, only to find out you're not getting paid. Not only are you out the load pay, but you're out everything that you put into that load. I mean, this is devastating to small carriers, devastating to any carriers, but especially small carriers. Yeah, it just goes on and on. I mean, there are multiple issues with load boards. There are several load boards out there, more than several. I mean, there are load boards for big trucks. There's load boards for hopper bottoms. There's, they cover all different aspects of the industry, hot shots, everything else. But if you go on a load board that you feel is a trusted load board, and you can't trust the loads that are on there to be real and to be verifiable loads, where does somebody go with that? A small entity, a small 1, 2, 3 truck company. I mean, how many loads can you haul and not get paid for and still be in business?
Not many.
Not many. And it just, the issues go on from there. I mean, there's the ghost loads, the bait and switch posts with inaccurate origin and destination information. A lot of these load boards, they don't make the brokers post correct information. They don't verify it. They don't require that they fill out all spots. I mean, I've talked to many people, so beyond the broker fraud stuff that goes on, just the load boards in general, they don't require the rate to be listed. They don't require the accurate miles to be listed. I mean, and I know people listening can relate to this one. You find a load that seems interesting. When you call on it to find out what the rate is, what some of the specifics are, well, they're still kind of vague with you. So maybe you work out a rate, but then when they actually send the rate con, you find out that the load picks up 100 miles further away, and the delivery is another 200 miles further than what was listed. Well, then all of a sudden, you've added 300 miles to a run that paid a certain X amount of dollars that you was figuring is going to give you this much dollars per mile or cents per mile. Now, that has definitely been reduced based on the fact that you add 300 miles to that load, because the load board allows brokers to post inaccurate information.
You said something a couple of minutes ago, ghost load. Can you explain what you mean by that term?
Well, the ghost loads, is one of the things that happens on there where brokers post loads multiple times. You have a lot of these load boards that use the analytics based on how many loads are posted, what the average pay is, and they give you these freight lane cents per mile basics, kind of to try to tell you what that should be paying, what you should be, in the ballpark of. But if you've got all these ghost loads posted, so you've got a load that is posted 10 times, And you can see it's the same load posted over and over and over again. Yet the load board's analytics department is coming up with numbers based on how many loads is posted, the miles traveled and stuff. So how accurate are those analytics when the information that's on the load board is not accurate?
Yeah.
So without going too far into the way the load boards, because I got to be honest, we've had discussions. OIDA has had discussions with different load boards about the way things are done, and we've brought to their attention the issues that our members have had with ghost loads being posted or bait and switch or just fraudulent brokered loads. Carriers, it's not hard to be a fraudulent carrier. You can get your DOT number, your MC number, and show that you're a carrier, go onto a load board and pull multiple loads off the load board saying that you're going to haul them, and then switch over and you're actually a fraudulent broker too, and then you repost those loads for a legitimate carrier to come along and pick up and go haul those loads, and the money doesn't pass through. The money passes to the fraudulent carrier who the broker thought hauled the load, and it doesn't pass to the real carrier who actually hauled the load. I mean, there's so many scams that are going on out there. We're in this digital age where, and I've heard this said many times, Albania is the double broker capital of the world. I don't know if that's true or not. I've heard it said, and I've done a little research on there, and there are folks in other countries that spoof the numbers to make them look like they're coming from the United States, yet it's all a fake. It's all a fraud. I mean, they are in this just for the scam, just to rip off the trucker. And it's unfortunate because the trucker, the one that actually put the fuel in the tank and that used their truck and that done the work and, sweated and everything else, they're the one that gets shorted. Everybody else along the route made money. The load board made money because, hey, people were posting loads, so they made money. The real broker got their load hauled cheap because nobody was arguing with them about wanting a better rate, because this fake carrier pulled the load from them and passed it to their fake brokerage side, who reposted it for, say it was a $3,000 load, they post it for $5,000. Somebody comes along and says, hey, great, a $5,000 load for this amount of miles. That's going to make my money right. Boy, that's going to really help me out. So then they go and pull a load only to not only spend the money on fuel, but not get paid. Something's got to be done. I mean, this part of the industry, the FMCSA has no say in it. Not that they go overboard on regulating anything that they don't see as a safety-related issue, and I use the little air quotes there, safety-related. There's no recourse for the small carrier in this situation like this, other than to file on a bond, which I just worked with somebody filing on one of these fake brokers' bonds. He hauled a load for $5,500 and ended up, after the bond paid out, got about $1,000. And he was like, but who do I get the rest of my money from? I said, man, nobody, because there's nobody to get the rest from. It had $1.2 million of freight rates posted on a $75,000 bond. So, when they worked the numbers on that, the guy got $1,000, or roughly $1,000. There's so many scams that goes on. I would say the load boards could do a whole lot more to stop some of this. But as long as brokers are paying the load boards and paying for these loads that they post, what incentive do the load boards have to stop this stuff?
Let's talk a little bit in the time we have left about how to protect yourself. And as you said, there's a lot of things out here where it's difficult to do. But let's start with fraudulent brokered loads. How do you tell if the broker on the load board is a real broker with a real load?
Verification. Take the information that you see on the load board, call that number, talk to them, and then go to the FMCSA's website, to the license and insurance side of the website, enter the MC number, and call the number that's listed on the Fed's website. Call that number and verify, basically working backwards from there to verify that the people that you're talking to are real. The part of the issue with that is, these loads are posted and you find a decent paying load. By the time you do all that, somebody else and it's a legitimate load, somebody else probably didn't do all that and got the load, but that other person's taking a risk too. It's when you go back and do this verification stuff that you get on some of these popular load boards and you feel that, hey, this is a legitimate load board. Are they doing the vetting to make sure that everybody's on there is real? You've got to do that yourself. You've got to go back and you've got to do those extra checks. Maybe a lot of folks use factors. Get with your factoring company, do your credit check through them as well. And I mentioned factors, and that's a whole nother aspect of this. You haul one of these fraudulent loads, you turn that bill into your factor, and then your factor doesn't get paid. You know who they're coming back to get that money from. They're coming back to the carrier. And people say, no, I use a non-recourse factor. Wrong answer. Non-recourse factor. What's that mean?
I've never heard of one yet.
I've heard them call themselves non-recourse factors.
No, they always get their money in the end.
They do always get their money back in the end, and they're coming back to the carrier. So you may have hauled this load, didn't get paid, put out the fuel, got the money from your factoring company, and now your factoring company wants it back. What do? I mean, you go to grandma and take a loan out, I guess. I don't know. It's going to go bad.
You mentioned credit checks in there, and I know that some factors offer that service. There are also some companies that offer that service, right?
There are different places. There are a lot of different ways you can do credit checks, but keep in mind, credit checks on brokers are not so much their actual FICO credit score,
right,
as it is, do they pay their bills? There's one. A factor that offers free credit checks for OOIDA members. You can go to the RTS Factor website, and they do credit checks, and they will tell you approximately how many days to pay and if these brokers pay. But keep in mind, you got to know that you're really dealing with the real broker, because you may have a popular broker and do that credit check and say, oh, everything looks good, but you might be talking to somebody in Albania who is not associated with this broker at all, but as a matter of fact has double brokered or rebrokered their freight. That whole double brokering thing gets thrown on carriers. Well, carriers pull loads and then they rebroker them. Well, that is what double brokering technically means. But when you got fraudsters in the middle, it's not the carriers that are doing it. I mean, they're a fraud broker, they're a fraud carrier, and they're just committing fraud and they're ripping people off. That's not double brokering in the terms of what the FMCSA says double brokering is. That's just ripping people off.
Well, and there's a few tools out there you can utilize to help protect yourself, right? None of it's foolproof, but like Tom was saying, you can go to the license and permits section on Safer. It's sponsored by FMCSA. It's important to check their authority history. If they've been in business 2 or 3 months, that's a red flag. A lot of these
scam brokers.
Yeah, a lot of these scam brokers are utilizing that methodology. They're going to run up the bill up to $400,000, $500,000, and they are just going to cancel the business after 3-4 months.
Yeah, and that is one of the biggest red flags, like Aaron said, is a broker that's been in business for 3 months, and you just got to really be careful.
Okay, well, guys, we've run out of time here, but I want to thank you very much for the information.
Glad to be here, Mark.
Thank you.
I've been talking with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Business Services. Landline Now will be back in a moment.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit howesproducts.com.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now. 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Recently, there's been a lot of controversy regarding the new independent contractor rule from the Department of Labor, including concerns that it could upset the owner-operator model in trucking. However, the rule in place before that, passed during the previous administration, contained a problem that the new rule might solve. Here to discuss that and more is Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Bryce, how are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How about yourself?
Very well. So let's get right to the meat of this. We have this previous rule that the new rule would do away with. What's the provision in this previous rule that OOIDA sees as a problem?
Yes, so it's very specific, and the final rule, what they did at the end was they included some examples that they kind of said would help illustrate and help understand certain working arrangements. And the one that they included was pretty clearly from the American Trucking Associations about a motor carrier that requires their independent contractors to use speed limiting technology. And I can just get into the details here, but basically what they say is if you have a carrier that limits the maximum speed of the owner-operator's vehicle and monitors it through GPS, the question is that control? Because that's what we're after here as part of the question of employee or independent contractor is how much control does someone have over their work and over their business? And in clarifying this question, the Department of Labor says that this measure, so using or requiring a speed limiter, and I'm quoting here, is implemented in order to comply with specific legal obligations and to ensure safety. So the real issue here is that the Department of Labor in this 2021 rule says speed limiters comply with a specific legal obligation and they're designed to ensure safety, which, both of those things on their face are just incorrect. And there are things that we continue to fight against. So that's the biggest issue. When we can get at it here, this probably will lead to a few other places. But I think the simplest way of understanding it is you have the Department of Labor greenlighting speed limiters in a sense when the Department of Transportation is still working on this mandate and OOIDA is fighting very strongly against it.
They mentioned in there that term specific legal obligations that they say speed limiters are fulfilling. As you mentioned there, the FMCSA has yet to require speed limiters. They're talking about it, but they haven't done it. Do they ever specify what legal obligation they're talking about here?
Yeah, and so no, not really. And in trying to give it a charitable reading, and this kind of gets into our other concerns, basically, I think what they're doing, again, they don't say this, so this is us trying to give them even the benefit of the doubt, but it's that carriers have an obligation to make sure that their equipment and their trucks and their operators are operating in a safe way. And so to do that, is a specific legal obligation to operate safely. But if you take that a few steps further, that is a really broad, I don't know if mandate is the word, or a really broad interpretation that you leave up to carriers. So if the conclusion is carriers have a mandate to operate safely, and so anything that a carrier does to operate safely, they have the green light to do. And again, this gets back to the issue of, does this kind of stuff mean you're controlling your workers? And under this 2021 rule, the Department of Labor is saying, basically, if you're doing something that you believe complies with your mandate to operate safely, then that is not something that can ever be control. And again, something like speed limiters, there's probably a few... there's not that many examples of things that are more controlling of a driver than physically limiting their top speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And now the new rule, of course, doesn't contain this.
Yeah.
Are there other ways the new rule is different that are important here?
Yeah, and I think kind of big picture, and this is what we've been telling our members and telling drivers and truckers more generally, is that, there are certainly some differences between the two rules, but aside from this provision, we don't think that there's enormous differences in what this would mean for owner-operators and for drivers who want to work as independent contractors. This sticking point was really the biggest one that we had. And I think one of the clarifications that this 2024 rule, one of the clarifications it made is helpful in understanding the difference. Basically, what the rule says is that this new rule, the 24 rule, it says if you're complying with a specific legal obligation, then that is not control. And the best example that we have is the requirement from Truth in Leasing regs that says you have to have your equipment leased exclusively to one carrier. That is black and white, and that is something that has to happen. And under this new rule, as well as under the 21 rule, that is not control. But in going a little further, what this new rule says is that basically methods of compliance or methods of insurance safety are potentially control. And that's what we've been saying, certainly driving the speed limit or obeying the speed limit or obeying traffic laws is something that, a carrier could say that their contractor should do. But there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, and that's what I think it gets back to is the 21 rule was a little too permissive in what it would allow carriers to do and allow their independent contractors to do while escaping any scrutiny of whether or not they were controlling those independent contractors. Because again, we can head into this now. The other issue, when you look at ATA's comments on this new rule, they say that their carriers require additional, and they say, quote, health and safety requirements, including, for example, inward and outward event recorders or speed limiters. So, it's not just speed limiters. We know that carriers want to require the use of, inward-facing cameras. ATA in their comments say, these improve safety for everyone and decrease deaths and injuries on our highways. So I think where they would be heading with this provision, if it were to stay in place, is saying, our carriers require independent contractors to do this. And because we say it's safety, then it's not at all up for debate whether this makes you an employer independent contractor. So will this eventually extend to how much work they permit independent contractors to do? Could they say, we find that after a certain number of jobs per week or per month, there's a decrease in safety, and so we're going to limit your work in the name of safety? Or you have to take safety training alongside our employees because we find that improves safety, with, again, no recourse or question of whether this is control. So I know it feels like we're really harping on this, but I think this is important to understand and why we're taking the position we are, and why this is such a concern for us when we're looking at the 21 rule compared to this new rule.
There's a related topic here that I do want to get in.
Yeah.
You mentioned the inward event recorders, which is just, in more simple language, the inward-facing cameras.
Yeah.
And that was a requirement with the under 21 pilot program that ATA pushed very hard for, among many other requirements that were built into that program. ATA has a recent statement on this that it seems to me contradicts what they're saying here.
Yeah.
What did they say?
Yeah, and so it's more than just a statement. It's actually what was in the recently passed government funding bill. So Department of Transportation required inward-facing cameras for this under 21 program. And, across the board, there has been lackluster interest in this program. Obviously, we aren't surprised. There's not a lot of younger drivers who want to, get into this industry when there's not good pay, not good working conditions. But ATA has blamed it on the requirement for inward-facing cameras. And so the new funding bill prohibits DOT from using inward-facing cameras as part of this program. So we look at it and we say, so on one hand, you're saying inward-facing cameras are driving away potential entrants. It's making the job less attractive. Yet on the other hand, here you are in comments saying, these improve safety, reduce deaths, and in fact, we require independent contractors to use them to improve safety. So we're going to make our independent contractors who presumably have more experience use these, but for those who are brand new to the industry and we're trying out 21-year-olds, we can't be forced to use those.
Okay, I wish we had more time to talk about that because that's certainly very interesting, but we are out of time. Bryce, thank you very much for the information.
Yes, thank you.
I've been talking with Bryce Mungen of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. And folks, remember to contact your elected representatives about these issues. The number is 202-224-3121. That's our program for today. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.